Hi, welcome back. This is Kamau. Welcome back to Kamau Mahakoe's Author Central. And we're going to be continuing the reading from There's Something You Should Know About Leroy. So I'm going to continue from chapter 13. Welcome back, Zande and Kim, my little pets, always here with me to keep me company and to listen to my stories. So chapter 13. The back of the chair was turned towards the artist. Prudence sat facing them so that her legs straddled the chair the way one sits on a horse. Both feet were firmly planted on the ground. Her arms embraced the top of the wooden chair, and her head rested on her arms. The gorgeous brown of the mahogany vied with the slightly lighter tone of her skin, contrasting and complementing. Her breasts played hide and seek with the alternating parallel bars of the back of the chair. Her meticulously shaved pubis rested delicately on the brown velvet. Mr. Willis was having an erection. He tried not to. He had instructed his male students not to. It was a thing much frowned upon in the profession. He was in principle against it. But Willis wanted this young woman. He wanted her. More than anything else, he wanted to taste her. He wanted to knead her flesh with his hands like he was making dumplings for soup. A soup he would thoroughly enjoy. He wanted to grab her buttocks and squeeze them in his hands. He wanted to pound her into submission. Willis gave his loins very firm instructions to quit the nonsense. His loins ignored him. He dared not move. He tried to look away. There were 17 students this morning, 10 females, 7 males. They were very focused and careful. They wanted to get it right. They wanted to do justice to the legs in particular, and the chair. The legs and the chair were their major concerns. Legs, a fetish in their own right, something to bring pleasure, something to stand on, something to walk away. People had legs, chairs had legs. Wood and skin had been thrust up against each other ever since the first man had encountered the first tree. This wood had been stained and polished. This skin had been washed and rubbed and lived in. Both had been prepared for this ritual, the ritual of touch. The artist wanted to tell the story. It was well worth telling. Prudence found herself as much drawn to art as she was to music. In the one, she was an active participant. In the other, she preferred to play a more passive role. Let the ones who had mastered the strokes execute them. She had mastered the pose and would provide them with something to execute. She did not envy the finesse of their stroke, the sharpness of their eyes. Her fingers were gifted with another kind of dexterity, and in her craft, her eyes were mainly closed. The music was dictated from within. She need only listen and follow. She had started modeling on a whim, agreeing to sit in for a friend who had been ill. She had thought nothing of it. Prudence had never had issues with her body. Since she was a little girl, she had enjoyed looking at her reflection in the mirror. There had never been a point where she had felt shame. It had always been amazement and wonder and pride. She never liked to conceal too much of her skin. She liked the feel of the sunshine on it. She liked the cool touch of the wind on it. People eavesdropped on the conversation between her clothes and her body. Some misunderstood it. Some felt the dialogue was too loud. Prudence treated the issue the way she treated pretty much everything in her life. She had very little diplomacy or tact. She said exactly what she meant, if she decided to say anything at all. She wore exactly what she wanted if she decided to wear anything at all. She exercised no discretion because she didn't feel it was anyone's business. And modeling crept upon her, and she sank into it. She enjoyed it. It enjoyed her. She was accused, even by a few of the artists, of being unnecessarily provocative and uncouth, even vulgar, in her poses and postures. She also swore a lot, which strengthened their points. She, of course, saw nothing wrong with swearing. Do you have a right to provoke me, and do I have a duty to resist? This question was asked of her, mainly by people who did not mind the provocation one bit and were not trying too hard to resist. At least, when you go to England, you'll have to cover up, they told her. No more Miss Tropical Paradise. Prudence had applied for acceptance into the Queen's Academy of Music in London. If she was offered a scholarship, she would study there for 3 years. A more advanced phoning process further along the road to stardom. Was that the ultimate end, to be a star, to earn millions? She knew it was not. It was a thing she loved to say because in her mind, the two things were inseparable. The perfection of her skill meant stardom. She felt she was that good. She had been told she was that good by people who would know. That's the wrap, people, said Mr. Willis. But he did not stand. The session had lasted longer than he had hoped. He needed a beer and a cigarette, preferably after he had Prudence. She had put on her robe and had gone into the adjoining room to change. He imagined they were at his apartment. They had just made love and she had gone into the bathroom to wash up. He had decided to lie in bed a while and take a few puffs. An ice-cold bottle of beer was on the nightstand. He heard her turn on the shower. Was she washing him away? Did she regret their rough encounter? Was she washing off his smell and his sweat? It didn't matter. He had sampled her. He owned her now. She could try to wash him off all she wanted. He sipped some of the beer. Mr. Willis became conscious of movement inside the studio, and it triggered him back to reality. It was Leroy. He was the only student left. He was waiting on Prudence, of course. His bosom pal, Prudence. Mr. Willis snickered. He had driven past them on Monday nights as they walked to the bus stop. They were usually romping or Prudence was playing her guitar. Mr. Willis was inclined to believe every word of the rumors he had heard. How could a red-blooded 23-year-old man have such a beauty bouncing around him and not sample her even once? Idiots. Either the rumors were true or Leroy and Prudence had some secret affair going on. Leroy had already packed up. He just stood there waiting. Mr. Willis watched him and nodded to himself. Definitely, definitely, he said out loud without realizing it. Sir? Asked Leroy. He thought Mr. Willis had been addressing him. Oh, nothing. You're waiting for Prudence, right? Yes. Women take too long to put their clothes on. And too long to take it off too. He didn't know what was wrong with him today. He needed a beer and a cigarette. Wayne was not there tonight. Prudence and Leroy headed down the corridor while Mr. Willis locked up the studio. They heard him fumbling with the keys. That man is so weird sometimes, Leroy said. Tell me about it. He's been hitting on me like hell, refusing to take the hint. Really? Leroy glanced back at Mr. Willis. It's no big deal. He doesn't stand a chance with me. They had almost cleared the blocks of classrooms and were headed in the direction at the gate. Oh, frig, I forgot to use the bathroom in the studio, said Prudence. I'll have to use the one over by drama. Come, walk with me, Lee. Leroy stood outside the bathroom. Prudence poked her head out. Frig, no toilet paper as usual. The money they charge for you to be at this place, and there's never any tissue in the bathroom. Got any tissue paper, Leroy? Leroy adjusted his bag, shuffled, and dug into his back pocket. He took out a neatly folded wad of toilet paper and handed it to Prudence. She reeled off some and handed it back to him. Thanks, Lee, I owe you one. No matter what level the educational institution you entered, it seemed, the bathrooms were more or less in the same condition. It was like a universal law of bathrooms. The cubicles stank. There was graffiti on the walls, puddles on the floor, no water in the tank, no toilet paper. Ready now, ma'am, said Leroy, pretending to be annoyed. She patted his head and giggled. Hey, want a ride? A blue Mercedes-Benz had pulled up and stopped at their feet. They peeped in and saw that it was Honeysuckle, Mrs. Blake. They gave new meaning to the question, want a ride? They hesitated. You're coming or not? Which way are you both going? Portmore, right? That's where I'm headed, she giggled. It was a private joke among them. Mrs. Blake was enjoying herself. She was not yet in her honeysuckle costume, but the persona had sniffed the night air and was railing to be let loose. Prudence sat in the front seat and she kept glancing over at Mrs. Blake. She could swear she saw the woman's face contort and the veins in her neck rise up, as if she was shape-shifting into honeysuckle before their very eyes. Both Prudence and Leroy were silent. On the back seat, beside Leroy, were files and loose paper, a box containing about 8 or so colored file jackets, a pretty pair of girls' ballet shoes tossed onto the floor, 2 action figures and spilled banana chips, the back seat of a mother's car. Children were shuttled to and fro in this car, and their mother was an administrator. Okay, I know all your questions, so let me just answer them. All right? She smiled at them, and there was something motherly, even sage, and teasing in it, yet something hypocritical. I do this 2 nights a week. My husband is the head of surgery at the hospital. He has no clue what I do in Portmore. We have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. The nanny stays with them when I go out. She scanned their faces to gauge their emotions. Blank. Look, don't judge me. I got married when I was 18. My husband is 20 years older than I am. We had our first child 1 year into the marriage and the other 2 soon after. The flames quickly went out. He kept refusing to let me go out to work, to do a normal job and have some variety in my life. I had to beg and plead. Then I discovered this. I tried it and liked it. I just want some excitement in my life, some action. She glanced around. Blank. Look, my girlfriend owns one of the motels along the strip. That's where I take my clients. Listen, I'm very careful with what I do, and I'm not asking for your approval either, okay? I'm just filling you in on what is what because you happen to know a little too much already. Don't judge me. I'm a very good mother. A very good mother, okay? Okay. Okay. She took them all the way to Greater Portmore, but they made her take a wrong turn into the scheme. They walked the rest of the way. They didn't want her sending a hitman to finish them off. She did say she had friends in high places and that they knew too much already. End of chapter 13. So now I'm going to chapter 14. Chapter 14. Your hands are very soft. Are all artists' hands so soft? They were at Helsha Beach. Leroy had been trying to teach Cheyenne how to swim. She wasn't making any progress. He decided to teach her how to float. He placed his arm gently beneath the arch of her back. She stretched out like a corpse, a stunningly beautiful one. Relax, don't be so stiff. Oh gosh, I'll never learn, she panicked, grabbed his shoulder and splattered in the water. The men on the beach were happy they had chosen this day to come. Just relax, you'll learn, encouraged the instructor. If you keep teaching me, I'm sure I'll learn, responded the student. Leroy chuckled. At least Cheyenne was starting to come out of her shell. It was usual for girls who were abused by their fathers to develop a negative attitude towards men. Leroy hoped this would not be the case with Cheyenne. From what he had heard from Prudence, Cheyenne had been through a lot. Leroy had been embarrassed to ask, but he hoped the abuse hadn't been sexual as well. He hoped that Cheyenne was still a virgin, such a sweet flower, only just beginning to bloom. She walked, laughed, and ran like she had never been touched. Her whole demeanor was loaded with inhibitions. The way she wrapped her skirt around her when she sat, the way she covered her mouth with her hand when she giggled, the way she tilted her face downwards and looked up shyly when she was given a compliment. Leroy had developed a strong resentment for people who robbed the cradle. He never told anyone for fear they would laugh at him, but he himself had been robbed. The one and only time he had ever had sex with a woman, she had forced herself onto him. He was 11 years old. She was 19, his sister's friend Dahlia. His sister had asked Dahlia to babysit his 3-month-old cousin. When the child was asleep, Dahlia approached Leroy. He was thin and timid. He hardly spoke to begin with, but after the incident, he withdrew even further. She held his hand and used it to massage her pubic area. Leroy didn't like the strange smell that had started to pervade the room. He wanted to retch, but still, in spite of himself, he felt a tingling in his groin. She pulled his shorts down and shoved him into her, slobbering wet kisses all over his body and face, nibbling at his ears. He wanted it to end, but she only gripped him tighter. He slid in easily and softly, and he hated the smell. She tried to coax him, kept squeezing his buttocks down onto her. He fought back only a little. She finally let him go. He never had sex with a woman again. There were times he had wanted to, but had held back. Let's go sit on the sand with the others, Cheyenne suggested. I think Prudence is upset with you. Prudence? Leroy glanced up to where the gang were seated in the shade, having a communal picnic, a festival, and soda. She keeps staring at us. She probably thinks I'm trying to take you away from her. Leroy burst out laughing. You, Shy, talking about taking away somebody's man. You're getting bold, Shy. He splashed some water at her. She ducked and splashed back. No, I'm just reading Prudence by the way she keeps looking at us. She's your girlfriend, right? Leroy looked away for a while. We're good friends. Good friends, huh? So, which one loves which? One of you certainly loves the other. Good to see you coming out of your shell, Shy, talking about love and everything. Gonna stop calling you Shy. Greg sprung up from the group and started sprinting towards the water. Leroy thought he was going to attempt one of his world-famous belly flops. He usually displaced half the water at Helsha Beach whenever he did. Leroy was getting ready to warn Cheyenne, but Greg sped straight past them, and soon 2 other men ran past in the same direction. Someone was drowning. They had gone in to try to save them. The woman had ventured out too far, and the strong underwater currents had started to tug away at her legs. She went under once, then emerged, screaming. Greg had seen the danger in an instant. He was the first to get to her. The other 2 men helped him to lead the woman in. She collapsed onto the beach and panted to catch her breath. She had come to the beach alone. She could have drowned without anyone knowing where she had gone. She thanked the men. She called them heroes and bought each one a beer. No one really wanted to stay in the water after that. Swimmers and non-swimmers alike narrowed their roam to within 3 feet of the shore. Parents were constantly looking around for their children, counting heads every 5 minutes till it became too overwhelming and they packed up their baskets and left, swearing never to return. But they would be back. No one ever kept their promise never to return to Helsha Beach. It was one of the most unkempt beaches, with only substandard bathroom facilities located far away from the swimming area, no changing room, and enough people had drowned there to qualify the beach as haunted. But none who swore never to return could keep their word. Greg the hero was pleased with himself. He strutted along the beach nursing his bear, making an occasional scan to check if anyone else needed his assistance. He had acted out of impulse and sheer goodwill, but now that the danger had passed, it slowly dawned on him just what a hero he had been. He hoped beyond hope that Prudence had witnessed his athletic sprint across the hot sand and into the water, how he freestyled against the massive waves, untiringly, refusing to let up until he reached his target. He hoped Prudence had noted that he had been the first to see the woman go down, the first to reach the woman, the main one hoisting her up so that her head never touched the water again, not one single time. He hoped Prudence had heard when the woman said he was a hero. Within an hour, the mellow vibes had dissipated so much that they decided to pack up and head home. It was only 2 o'clock. "Hey Lee, I'm gonna come up to your house and spend some time, okay?" The anger was latent in her voice, but Prudence tried to appear calm. Leroy occupied the upstairs quarters, and his landlord and family lived downstairs. It was a fairly common arrangement in these parts. It made sense. The owners preferred to remain downstairs. They had the foresight to realize that soon they would be too old to be climbing stairs up and down. Leave those acrobatics to the tenants, who were usually much younger and more active anyway. Most upstairs quarters were self-contained and did not have an indoor entrance from downstairs, but were accessed from the staircase towards the outside of the house, usually from the side where the quads had been attached. Leroy had a bedroom, living room and kitchen, a small bathroom, and a platform that doubled as laundry area and balcony. He could catch the cool breeze that drifted down from the Helsha Hills some evenings. He could wash at night and hang them out on the balcony without worrying about them being stolen. The platform area was grilled all around. He had been working on a painting earlier that morning. The newspapers were still scattered on the floor, as were the tubes of paint, as were the brushes, as were the small containers of water. Prudence was quite used to it. "No guitar today?" he chuckled. Prudence didn't answer. For once, she had left her guitar and she hadn't even realized it. She walked over to the easel and clutched both sides of it as arm's length, the way one did when they were giving something a good scrutiny. It was no use. She couldn't figure out what it was. Leroy was shuffling about in the kitchen. He was wearing shorts and no shirt. The seawater had made him famished. He was foraging in the fridge. Prudence entered the kitchen holding a large bristled paintbrush in her hand. It was loaded with thick red paint. She ran the brush along the spine of his back. The thick wetness startled him. He shivered and clasped the brush. She giggled. "Prue, what the hell? Why don't you sign up for art class, eh?" She pressed her body against his and tilted her head up to indicate that her mouth was available. He could kiss her if he wanted. He backed away and chuckled nervously. "Girl, I'm starving. I need to get something in my belly." "Go ahead and eat, Mr. Greedy." She left him to his sandwich. Prudence walked into the bedroom. 4 huge paintings were hung on the wall. There was a built-in closet with very stylish clothes. Leroy alternated between casual wear and haute couture. It was a mystery to those who knew him. This minute he was in t-shirts and jeans, next minute he was in silk shirt and tie. He had no job, he was a full-time student at PAVE and had all the artist paraphernalia, which were by no means cheap. No one knew how he afforded such luxuries. 5 pairs of dress shoes lay on the floor of the wardrobe, 2 pairs of sneakers and 2 pairs of loafers. On the shelves, piles of clean iron shirts and pillowcases, a large checkered comforter similar to the one now on the bed, bright folded towels and a few caps. From racks were hung dress shirts and casual shirts, 2 jackets and several pairs of pants. Prudence closed the wardrobe, locked in the scent of lilac that had perfumed the air. The bedroom was spotless. 4 ceramic vases containing orchids were placed on the floor at each corner of the room. Red satin drapes tumbled in front of the window, giving a soft glow to the room. "You're a neat freak," Prudence giggled. Much of her anger had subsided, being alone with him again. He had walked into the bedroom and found her naked. He asked her why she had taken her clothes off. Had she been drinking? "Why are you behaving like this, Prue? This isn't like you. First you act up on the beach and now this. What's wrong with you today?" She clasped her hands around his neck and tried to kiss him. He eased her away gently. "Put your clothes back on. I don't like seeing you like this." "Seeing me like this? You see me like this all the time." "Put your clothes back on, Prue. I'm serious. Cut it out." He turned away and walked out of the bedroom. She dressed and left without saying a word. The tears streamed down her cheeks, but she dried them before she emerged into the glow of the afternoon. She crept in without anyone noticing that she had returned. She retrieved her guitar and took it outside, scaled the wall separating their house from the neighbors, and climbed up onto the roof. People crisscrossed over the roofs all the time, sometimes cutting their journey in half. Maud had warned her about it, but Prudence loved to climb. She went up to the roof when she needed to get away from the rest of civilization. They knew where she was because they heard her playing her guitar, but they knew she didn't want to be disturbed. Sometimes she even sang, but this afternoon she wanted to cry. She had not cried in years. She thought of herself as a strong young woman, tough and resilient. She did what she wanted, she said what she felt, most times anyway, and was unfazed by other people's opinions or interpretations. But today, she stayed on the roof and cried intermittently for 5.5 hours as she strummed her guitar. She instructed Godfrey to cancel all her shows. "But, Miss Prudence, the venues have been booked. All the tickets are sold out. Think about the fans. How will they cope?" She waved him away from the dressing room as if to say, "Leave me now. I am tired. I need my rest." He had brought dozens of roses. She didn't want any roses. When she came down, the house was quiet. Only Maud was shuffling about. Stubbs was fast asleep on account of the evening news. Daphne had just come home and was in the kitchen rustling up some grubs. Prudence didn't want any food. She went straight into her room. Cheyenne was already fast asleep on the bed. Her arms played above her head on the pillow, her face turned towards the wall in sweet oblivion. She normally started but wrapped like a cocoon. She normally started out wrapped like a cocoon, a squiggly worm in metamorphosis, but by mid-sleep, most of the sheets had been unraveled. Prudence climbed into the bed beside her. The dim light from the living room cast a glow through the cracked door. Prudence slipped off her clothes. She lay naked. She felt the warmth of Cheyenne's legs beside hers. She had started to cry again. She slowly slipped her hand over the knob of her pubis and gently stroked up and down, sideways and in circles. After a very short while, she heaved, stiffened, and sighed. Cheyenne exhaled deeply and stirred, still fast asleep. end of chapter 14. End of chapter 14. So join me for more.